For Cindy Krum. She's the CEO of MobileMoxie, and MobileMoxie was founded in 2008 and provides mobile marketing consultancy. Cindy is also the author of a book, Mobile Marketing, Finding Your Customers No Matter Where They Are.
Okay, thank you for the awesome introduction, Linda. So like she said, my name is Cindy, and I'm excited to be here talking to you today about algorithms and how they rank and spread information. So if we think back to the origin of information spreading, we might think to communication, people just talking to one another, word of mouth, and then we get to things like newspapers and radio, and then maybe broadcast TV and cable TV, and now we have a lot of digital TV, as Phil mentioned. But what the reality is like he said, people aren't actually consuming digital TV and streaming internet content and video like this. They're consuming it like this. And we know this, that it's an international trend, that people are canceling their cable subscriptions and signing up for OTT kinds of video internet streaming services instead. And this trend is driven by the younger generation, people in high school, college, and just out of college, or around that age, often prefer online streaming services and often have never had a cable subscription or satellite subscription in their name. And so we know this trend is going to continue. This is important to pay attention to. And as it turns out, video is the favorite type of content on almost every platform on the internet. In Google, video content is 50 times more likely to drive organic search results than just plain text. On Facebook, more than 80 billion videos are viewed per day, and now they're adding playlists to probably try and compete directly with YouTube. And then, of course, there's YouTube, which, as we just discussed, now offers subscription, but you can also rent and buy most TV and movie content there, or you can live stream things like news and sports and music. So that platform is changing from user-generated content to more professionally created content, or it's evolving to be more inclusive. And then, of course, there's Twitter, which is kind of the metaverse of the internet, because you can embed tweets, or you can embed videos directly in a tweet, or you can embed videos from YouTube in a tweet, or you can embed stuff from Facebook in a tweet, and then Google indexes everything that Twitter has. And so video is important on Twitter, too. And in fact, a video tweet is 6 times more likely to get retweeted than a photo tweet, and about 20 times more likely than a text-only tweet. So that's powerful. And of course, social media plays into this, because when we consume videos on our phone, we have the same device right there where we participate in social media. And so almost half of the world is on social media, about 47%, but 80% of those people use their phone as their primary means of accessing social media. And so the mobile video connection is a very big deal. And of course, we know how big mobile phones are in general, that there's still room for the social media part to grow on this. More people have mobile phones than other important things like electricity and bank accounts and running water. So there's a lot of room for growth in the social media and video space. Now, what's interesting and also difficult is the new kind of fractured nature of the way people are consuming video. Because they're consuming it on a personal device, they don't have to compromise at all. They can watch whatever they want, whenever they want sometimes, and they don't have to negotiate with a flatmate or a family member for a shared TV. So this fracturing is creating more and more niche content that's available that people can find and search for. But will it rank? Will it show up? Will it ever get the chance to be in their view? And that's an important question, and something we think about, or that I think about a lot. Because to me, algorithms are so important. They surface the information that we're looking for. And so in that way, algorithms can kind of change the world if they're not allowing some content to rank or preferring other content. And all of the social media platforms and Google, where we get most of our information in a day-to-day basis, they use algorithms. And I like to focus on Google because it's what I'm passionate about. And I think in many ways Google does change the world, the algorithm. And so I wanted to give you just a bit more information about my background. I have run a company called MobileMoxie for a little bit over 10 years, and I was one of the first people to talk about ranking content in mobile algorithms, or for mobile phones. And we specialize in media content and big international media brands and how they rank in the algorithms. We also do e-commerce and travel and food, and then we have a whole different set of customers that are in highly regulated industries where they have extra laws and extra requirements, and those logos don't go on a slide like this. But we love the complex nature of trying to monitor and market different kinds of companies within the algorithms, because it's really interesting. It's a fun problem-solving game. So let's talk basically about what is an algorithm, because this is what I live and breathe. Algorithms are essentially just very complex math equations that are tasked with doing a specific thing. In the case of a search engine, they're tasked with scoring and organizing information in terms of relevance and usefulness. And that makes them very important because they can filter out things that they think are not relevant or not useful. And part of the algorithm is reinforcing or capitalizing on engagement. So with engagement, what happens is that the algorithms tend to amplify information unequally. Now, Google swears that they don't do much personalization in search results right now, but what they do say that they'll do is localizations. They give localized results. But if you think about Google Maps and how good Google is at getting you from point A to point B and knowing when you're there and saying welcome home or you've arrived at your destination, the localization can be very specific if they want it to be. They have the ability to do that. So algorithms amplify information unequally, and that necessarily means that algorithms can or have the potential to distort our perception of reality by suppressing some information and showing others. Now, it's not necessarily malicious, but it could be accidental. It could just happen, and we might not know because the algorithm is too complex to figure out. Now, the problem with that is this concept that's talked about in cybersecurity a lot, which is called in screen we trust. And if you think about us as humans, we rely a lot on trusting other humans. It's necessary to get through the day, or it makes it a lot easier if we just believe that what we're told is true. But the same is true for computers, and actually even more so. People really trust computers because smart people make computers, and smart people made Google. And so when I search Google, something really smart is going to come out of it. It's going to be vetted, or it's going to be accurate. And they over-trust, over-rely on the ability of this algorithm to determine what is true and what is not. But in reality, the algorithms aren't great at this. They have ways of trying to do it, but it's very easy for an algorithm that doesn't live in our reality to really, really discern what is truth and what is fact, and what is useful and what is not. So algorithms can make this all very hard to understand. And algorithms, especially Google's algorithm, is intentionally complex, not just because they want to do a good job and answer as many questions and results as possible, but they make it intentionally difficult because there are people like me and my friends who are out there trying to learn it and game it, or at least take advantage of what we can to rank well on the terms that we're trying to market towards. And so they make it hard, and they constantly change it to keep up with users and needs of the users, but also, you know, to make it hard to take advantage of. And so Google says that they use over 200 ranking factors in every search result to compile the results and to order them. And so often we'll see reports like this where we've ordered by the ranking factors and what we think is really important. But this can be a bit deceiving because a lot of SEOs also believe that the query or the intent of the query can actually change the algorithm that Google is using to surface the result. And so that means we're dealing with multiple algorithms, and we're maybe not sure when one algorithm is in play or another. And it may just change the weighting of different aspects. How important is this in this query versus that query? Or it may be a totally different algorithm. But what we do know is that Google is generally working with multiple algorithms at once, and then there are algorithms within algorithms. So one algorithm can trigger another one to come into play. And so that of course, makes it very difficult. So in the SEO industry, we track things like this with surveys, annual surveys. A couple companies put them out, and they say, hey, SEO professionals, what do you see causing ranking shifts? What do you see working the most? And we'll get a diagram. But again, these are sometimes skewed and not so accurate. But in general, what they come back with is 4 basic ranking factors. There are many, many, of course, but they focus on relevance. How relevant is the text on the page and the text in the metadata, title tags and stuff like that, to the query? How high is the domain authority? How high is the page authority? How good does the page look? Does it look like it's high quality content? And then links. And for years, Google has relied on links as kind of votes. Because if I link from my website to your content, I'm voting for you. I'm saying, hey, my users like my content, and I like you. I think my users will like you. And so it's a vote of confidence. But links actually filter back into the other aspects of these ranking factors, because if you have relevant links from other sites that are related to the query, then you yourself look more relevant. If you have high domain authority because you have a lot of content on your site that's related to the topic, then you look very authoritative. And if you have lots of links on your page, the individual page, then you look more authoritative. So all of these things can kind of mix together. And of course they do in the algorithm. They just become scores. And so with that, the other thing that can make it difficult and hard to track, that many people don't really think about very much, is that Google is also changing results from a phone query to a tablet query to a desktop query. They're not the same. And since you usually only do a search one at a time on one device, it's easy to miss this. You wouldn't know. And the changes aren't necessarily drastic, but if you're in position 2 in one of them, and then in position 3 in another one, that's actually going to change the traffic that you get from the organic search result quite a bit. So it can be very important, and especially if you're in position 1 on desktop where you're at work and you say, oh yeah, we're in position 1, that's great, but you're not checking on a mobile phone, the results can be very different. Now, the other thing that can happen is that results can change from location to location, especially on mobile. And this is something that we kind of know, but we might not think about so much. But in this query for disease control, you can see that the #1 ranking website is the CDC. That's a good result. That makes sense. But then when I'm searching in Los Angeles, the #2 result is the LA Community Center for Disease Control. That's a good result because I'm in LA. Now, I didn't search for disease control in LA. Google just figured it out. But when I move 17 kilometers away, about 10 miles, and I search for the exact same thing, I get a different result. The first result is still the CDC, and the second result is a different page from the CDC because they've decided that the LA result 10 miles away is too far away. It's not relevant enough for me where I am when I'm standing in Burbank, California. So that can change, and it's not just map results that are changing by where you're standing when you search. Other things that can impact the way a search result works or ranks is the phone language. So you set your default phone language, and you assume that that's how everyone's phone is set, but it's not. People who speak multiple languages may have their primary language set, even though they talk to you in English. So if you have lots of customers who are bilingual, it's useful to be testing with different primary phone languages. In this case, we're sending really confusing signals to Google. We're searching from Denver, Colorado in the US, but the phone language is set to Bulgarian, and we're searching in English. So lots of really mixed signals. What happens? Google tries to figure it out. We search for Toyota Bulgaria, and what happens is Google's instructions and Google's links in their navigation are in Bulgarian, but the call to action to call this Toyota dealership is in Bulgarian. They've translated that. So that's not too surprising. But then move over to a search in Google Maps and search for restaurant near me. Same setting. We're in Denver. The phone language is set to Bulgarian. I'm searching in English. But look below, all of the results have been translated into Bulgarian. The restaurant names have stayed the same, but the descriptions of the restaurant for the ad and the organic map rankings are in Bulgarian. And if we clicked through, it would be interesting to see that, or you might be interested to see that all of the reviews of the restaurant have also been translated into Bulgarian, regardless of what language they were in originally. So this can change things, and it's important to at least think about what users might have set up when they're searching. Where are they? What language are they using? Now, another major change that's transpired in the past 2 years with Google is something that we call mobile-first indexing. And mobile-first indexing is a bit different than mobile-first design, if you're familiar with that concept. But when Google says they're using mobile-first indexing, what they mean is that they're crawling and indexing the content on the web as if they were a phone. So if you have content on your website that's not mobile friendly, that either doesn't work or doesn't exist for mobile devices, then Google might not be able to find it. And if they can't find it, they can't rank it. And the reality is that with mobile first indexing, if you're doing a bad job on mobile, it could also hurt your desktop, your ability to rank on desktop too. So you can't just say, we don't care about mobile anymore. Google wants you to care about mobile because it represents more than 60% of the searches worldwide. So that's how most SEOs talk about mobile first indexing, but I tend to talk about it a little bit differently because this is my specialty, it's what I'm passionate about. And what I've seen since the launch of mobile first indexing is a larger change at foot. And that is to say that Google is doing more work to try and surface answers more than websites. They're trying to become an answer engine instead of just a search engine. And we see this with a 6x increase in what we call featured snippets. It's the short answer on the left side of the screen where it's lifting a bit of text from the website that it's linking to and lifting an image as well. So those have grown dramatically. And then the other thing that's grown dramatically is the knowledge graph results, these things that look like an encyclopedia fact sheet. And those show up on the right side when you're on a desktop. But important to remember that they show up on top in a mobile phone. Everything becomes stacked. So they push any kind of organic result way down. So you get less visibility. But, you know, knowledge graph might be good, but if it's pushing your website ranking down, you might lose traffic. So it's something that you at least need to know about and decide if you like it or not. Now, in terms of video, Google is trying harder with ranking answers here as well. You can see on the left in the example, Google is ranking a YouTube video directly in the search result, and the search is for how to tie a tie. And what Google has done is not just ranked this video on how to tie a tie, but they've constrained it and said, here's a clip. We think this is the part of the video that actually answers your question. On the right, something similar, but a bit more detailed. It's a video that's ranking about podcasting for beginners, and they show multiple clips that they've lifted and said, maybe just start here, or try starting there, because that might answer your question the best. So Google is working really, really hard to parse the videos to show users what they might want. And the same thing is happening with audio. Google has doubled down on podcasting and started saying, we love podcasting, you should start a podcast, let us help you start a podcast. And they're a bit late to the game. Podcasting has been around for a while. But it makes sense when you think about their other projects and what they've been investing in a lot. And that is Google Assistant. And Google Assistant is the part of the search engine that accepts voice queries and automates the part of the Google feed for you. And so if they can index podcasts, podcasts are usually a Q&A format and have a lot of facts and interesting discussion in them. If they can parse the videos the way they did with clips, we think they're starting to index a podcast one episode at a time, but then soon we'll see segments and audio clips because they can cast them through to the Google Assistant. And when you ask the Google Assistant a question, it can play a segment of a podcast to answer your question rather than reading it out to you in robot voice. And remember, they have to find answers to do this voice-only stuff because probably the worst experience in the world you can imagine from Google would be this little thing trying to robot voice read an entire web page. That's not a useful result. That's not what anyone wants. So we have the podcast ranking above the knowledge graph, which is rare. Usually knowledge graph is at the top. But then if we scroll down below the knowledge graph, something else interesting happens here, and that is the podcast that I searched for has a Twitter carousel that's also ranking. And the Twitter carousel has videos that are hosted on YouTube. So these guys recorded video and audio, posted the video to YouTube, tweeted about it, and then Google indexes Twitter really well, so now it's ranking here. So you can see why I say this can get very complex in terms of strategy. But that's actually potentially a very good thing, especially if that company, for instance, has a website that doesn't do well on mobile, or that isn't mobile friendly. They can leverage the rankings of Twitter and YouTube to drive traffic, to drive brand awareness, to drive their communication, even if the website isn't doing a good job of it. Now, something else that a lot of people don't realize is that sometimes Google is driving blind, especially with the algorithm the way it is now. It uses a lot of machine learning to build the algorithm kind of on the fly, to build and rebuild the algorithm. And so sometimes when they launch changes, they can do a simulation in advance, but not a very long simulation that's going to be super accurate because the internet changes so fast. So they sometimes just have to launch and see what happens. And this was a big deal right when they started rolling out the mobile first indexing update, because they were trying very hard to rank answers, but they were getting a lot of them wrong. So in this case, how many legs does a horse have? 6. How many legs does a snake have? 4. So they were getting it wrong. And those are kind of not too big a deal. No one's going to rush out and go find a snake to verify, hopefully. But it can get more controversial. In this one, who is the king of the United States? Barack Obama. That's problematic. Even worse, is Obama planning a coup? The featured snippet says essentially yes. And so that's dangerous. And Google realized very quickly that it was getting into dangerous territory by doing this. So they added 2 different updates to try and fix the algorithm, and especially the ability to surface answers. They added an algorithm update called EAT. Everyone just abbreviates it to EAT, which stands for expertise, authority, and trust. And it's saying we don't want to rank things, and especially we don't want to rank answers, if the website hasn't reached some certain level of expertise, authority, and trust. We have to know that this is a legitimate company that's done the research, that's showing real stuff. And part of it's trying to get rid of some of the fake news, right? To weed that out. Now, the other update that they added was called YMYL, which stands for Your Money or Your Life. So it's kind of like someone's trying to mug you, but what it really means is Google has to be extra careful with ranking answers that risk your money or your life. So if there's an article speculating that such and so company is about to go under, that may risk your money. Maybe that's not something that Google wants to place a bet on and rank as an answer. Google doesn't want to endorse that information. But more likely, a lot of the things that got affected by YMYL were health-related. So if, for instance, the CDC has an article about a specific disease and you search for that, the CDC will rank as an answer because it's got all the EAT, and we know that they're authoritative. But if they don't have an article on that disease and some random hippie website has an article about this disease saying all you need to do is eat a bunch of lemons and you'll be cured forever, that's dangerous to rank, right? Because that's not proven, possibly not scientific, stuff like that. So they added these algorithms. And then they added one more. Now, this was just kind of announced in the past week or so, one called BERT, but it's actually been in place for quite a while. This one is a real mouthful to say, but it stands for Bi-Directional Encoder Representation Transformers. What it basically means is natural language processing. And so Google looks at the words before and after to try and understand, and in fact, they look at the whole website in context to get the meaning of the text. So in this case, I put the website text from the homepage of the 2020 census website in the US, put it into this API to see what Google could find. And they color code it there, but you can also see that they score each word and they organize it. And they say, this is a person, this is a place, this is a thing with a Wikipedia article. And then they score it on sentiment and salience. And they actually even break down and diagram the sentence. This is the noun, this is the verb, to tell you what they understand from the text that you've got. So if you want to understand how Google's algorithm works, this is one of the best ways to get in there and see what is Google really understanding about my page. Now, they also do interesting things like this with images, where they can say this is text, advertising, a flyer. They can highlight the entities that they're seeing in an image. This is about the census. This is about the US. It mentions the Constitution. And then they do things to evaluate and eliminate, filter out things that might be harmful, like adult content, a spoof, any kind of violence or something racy. And so that's given us much more detailed answers to the questions. But what's happening now is with all that information that's showing up in the search result, we're getting a lot less traffic because people get exactly what they need directly in the search result. So SEOs are very worried about that because it makes it very, very hard to measure. So to help people out, we added a tool called the Serperator Tool. That slide got messed up. Let's go to the next one. We created the Serperator Tool, which allows you to choose from a bunch of different phones, put a full address in anywhere in the world, and choose what location you want to search in, and see what does the result look like in Google right now. And so that's really useful. In the example I had, it said it was a query for where to vote. And that might be useful if you're looking into voter suppression or stuff like that. In the free tool, you get one address at a time. When you pay, you can upload a whole CSV and test one query on all of the locations that you want to test to see how does the result look here, here, and here. And that really helps with strategy because you at least know what you're up against. So I love algorithms. I love this stuff. Please come and talk to me if you have any questions or if you want to try the tools, any of that. Thank you.
Thank you, Cindy.